Welcome. Let's look at linear equations and making straight lines and using slope, y-intercept, and whatever else is needed. Now, this is a review from prior years, but it's such an important thing. It's worth a quick review. And let's go through writing equations. So we are going to use 2 points, and we're going to write in point-slope form and slope-intercept form. So both of these first require that we find the slope. So let's remember that the slope formula is one of the y's take away the other y, and one of the x's take away the other x, and the first of each, the first y and first x, need to come from the same pair. So oftentimes it's written as 2 minus 1, 2 minus 1. So we'll stick with that. So this is an x and y, and this is an x and y. So for the first pair, we'll call that x1, x sub 1, and y sub 1. And the second pair will be x sub 2 and y sub 2. So if we're going to use those, then that is slope y2 is -4, and we're going to subtract -9. And on the bottom, for the x's, we'll do 3 take away 5, with the 4 and the 3 here coming from the same pair. So since that's a positive, that means it's 9 take away 4, which is 5, and it's 3 take away 5, which is a -2. So a 2, and this is a negative. Now I think I'll write that more clearly with a good big negative. So that's our slope. Now when we come over to the point slope form, we can put in y1 and x1, and we chose this one for it. It doesn't really matter. We could use the other one for it, but we might as well stick with this. So it's going to be y take away -4 equals -5/2. Oops, actually I started putting the 2. This should be -9 because I'm using this pair here. So y take away a -9, which will be a positive, and -5/2, x take away 5. So I have 5 and -9 in there. Let's make that +9 equals -5/2, x minus 5, and that's all there is to it. If you want the point slope form, then you don't do the distribution here. That's only done after you state that you have found the point slope form. All right, now let's take a look at the slope intercept form. There's 2 ways to get that. One of them is simply to take the point slope form, if you already did it, and calculate that out. So I'm going to actually do that here. Y plus 9 equals -5/2x plus 25/2. I'm going to subtract 9. And over here, I want to subtract 9, but it actually has to have a 2 denominator, so I'm going to have to make it -18/2, or subtracting 18/2. So we get y is equal to -5/2x, and 25 take away 8 would be, what, 7? Yes, 7. 25 take away 8 is 7. So it's going to be plus 7/2. So this actually is the slope-intercept form. And we have the slope here, and we have the y-intercept here, and we could write those in decimals if we wanted to. So y equals -2.5x plus 3.5 would also be an acceptable way to show this answer. Now let's look, though, at the other way to do it if we didn't have the point slope form already ready for us. So what we want to do is y equals -5/2x plus b. We already found the -5/2, so of course we're going to use it there. And we can put any of the points in there. It can be the 9, the 5 and -9, or the 3 and -4. Doesn't matter. In fact, just because it's different, I'll put the -4 in for the y. We'll use the second pair this time. And -5/2 times 3 plus b. So we have -4 equals -15/2 plus b. So now we're going to add -15/2 to both sides, plus 15/2. So it's going to be adding that there and adding it over here. Well, now we can't add these two without making them the same fraction, or I could look at, there's a couple of things to do. I can make the -4 into -8 over 2 plus 15 over 2. Okay, and that'll make us 7 over 2, which we know is right. Or I can do -4 plus, well, 2 goes into 15 7 times and a half. Okay, so 7, take away 4 is 3. 3 and a half is 7 over 2. So that's also, that would be 3 and a half equals 3.5 equals 7 over 2. All of those would be right. So that means that the B, we figure out, is equal to 7 over 2, or 3.5. And we get y equals -5 over 2x plus 7 over 2. Looks to me like it's the same thing as on the other side. And of course, I could use -2.5 and 3.5 if I wanted to. So whether you do it with that or whether you do it with that, you're still going to get the same answer. Now let's look at some variation. Remember that y equals 3 is a horizontal line on a graph. And that's because at every one of these points, the y is 3. At that point, the y is 3. It does not matter what the x is. What matters is that the y is 3 at every point. Whereas x equals -2 is a line going up and down. That's because at every point on here, we have -2 for the x, and the y can be whatever that is. Okay, here it's -2 and the y. Here it's -2 and the y. Up here it's -2 and whatever the y is. The y changes, but the x is -2 everywhere on that vertical line. So you get a horizontal line if it's y equals, and a vertical line if it's x equals something, because the x is the same at every point, so it has to go up and down to match that x value. Now here, when you're making an equation for parallel perpendicular lines, remember that at the first part, when you have 2 points, you use the slope formula to get the slope. Here, that's given to you. You don't need to use the slope formula because if the lines are parallel, use the same slope. So m is 3.5. Okay? And here, if it's perpendicular, you take the opposite reciprocal. So here, the m would be equal to -2 over 7. So we have to change the sign and flip it. So in this case, I'm going to do y equals 3.5 x plus b. Let's put in these numbers for this point. -30 equals 3.5 times -7 plus b. Okay, so 7 times 3 is 21, and then 7 times 5 is like 3.5 more. So there's a couple of the ways that you can calculate that out. I believe that comes to -24.5. So we have -30 equals -24.5 plus b. So when you add the 24.5 on both sides, okay, you're adding it, you get a -5.5. So now we have the two things that we need, and we would say that y is equal to 3.5x minus 5.5. Or if you want to do it with fractions, it's 7 over 2, and I believe that's 11 over 2. All right. Now, when it's perpendicular, we're going to do the exact same thing, but instead of using 3.5, we're going to do -2 over 7, because it's the opposite reciprocal. Okay, let's work it out just the same way. Oh, now, here's an interesting thing that saves us some work, is you notice that because the x is -7, right now that 7 and that 7 will cancel out. And so we get -30. Negative times negative is positive, so we have 2 plus b. And when we subtract 2 on both sides, we get -32 is equal to b. So we have y is equal to -2 over 7x minus 32. one's when parallel, this one's when perpendicular. Okay, so that's just a reminder on how to do those. You already know, but it's not going to hurt to review and make sure you're comfortable with doing parallel and perpendicular lines, or those that are parallel. Now, let's look at analyzing a graph. Horrified at the cost the last time you needed a prescription drug? Well, many adults are. You may not know the prices, but the prices have been going up and up, rising steadily, okay, since 1991. If they've been at a steady increase, then that means we could have a slope in a straight line, which is what this shows. So what we're going to do, what's the y-intercept, and describe what it means. Use the two coordinates to compute the slope and what does the slope mean. And then write a linear equation in intercept form. And then use your model to predict the cost in 2010. So we're getting a y-intercept, the slope, a linear equation, and we're going to predict. And then we also have to describe and say what it means. All right, so let's do that. Let's first think y-intercept. So A, y-intercept looks like it's about 24. Oop, that's reminded here, because if the x is 0, then it's on this line, and that means the y-intercept is 24, or it can be written as the point 0, 24. Okay, but the number itself for 24, that means the cost was $24 in 1991. Now for B, okay, we want to find the slope and say what it means about the cost. So for the slope, we need 2 points, and we have the 2 points here. So m is equal to 38 minus 24 over 7 minus 0, because that's y2 and x2, and y1 and x1. So we get 4. That's 14 over 7, which is equal to 2. So slope is 2. That means that there's an increase of $2 every year. I should put an average increase, because it might be higher in some years and lower in others. But that's the answer to that one. Now for C, we want to make the equation. So for this one, it's to write the linear equation. Okay. Oh, and in fact, I need to circle that as well. So that in the first one, the cost was that amount. In the second one, we found the slope and stated what it was or what it means. And now we have to make an equation. Well, the equation's y is flat, y equals mx plus b. We already know the slope, 2x plus b. All we need now is to put in one of the points. And actually, the y-intercept for b is already here. We know the y-intercept is 24. And if I did do 24 and 2 times 0, I would get b is equal to 24. So that means I can say y is equal to 2x plus 24 for the equation. Okay. So that's part C. C, B, and A. All right. Now, using your model, the model is the equation. Using that model, predict the cost. Now, this was set up so that it ended in the year 2000. Okay, so that would be year 2000. At that point, 2010 was 10 years away. So let's figure out then what it would be. So we're going to do for D, y equals 2x plus 24. Point of this is for that many years. So x is going to be equal to, well, 2000 is 9, then 2010 is 19. Okay. So that means we need to do y equals 2 times 19 plus 24. 38. So we get 38 plus 24. So y is equal to 62. What that means is now that the average cost will be $62 in 2010. And it will have gone up from $24 for the prescription, average prescription cost in 1991. Right there, 1991. So from $24 up to $62. That's not quite triple, but it's more than double and closer to tripling than doubling. Very expensive. All right, so here what we have is from using a graph and recognizing what the title and the side explanations tell us, we're able to answer various questions. Okay, in this case, to what the y-intercept means, how to get the slope and what it means, and writing an equation and then predicting something for the future based on the equation so that it goes out, continues out from this point here. Well, hey, I hope that helps with some of the things here with linear equations. Thank you for listening and watching.